Good morning and welcome to the NBA Daily. Coming up, believe it or not, the Sixers are down pretty bad right now. The Grizzlies beat the Suns in spite of KD passing the 30,000 point mark. And we have James Edwards on to talk about the Knicks and their big win over the Pacers. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Zena. Before we get started, I want to tell you guys a bit of exciting news. We launched a Discord. Now, Zena, I don't really know what Discord is, but apparently
I don't either. But we're
it's
gonna
like a chat
for
room.
you guys.
No. It's it's like a chat for the show. We're gonna take questions there. It's a place for us to hang out during games, maybe. Trying to build a little community here. I'll include that, it'll be in the show description and show notes. So please join us and come talk hoops with us. It'll be fun. You can teach us how to use it. How about that, Zena? They can teach us how to use it. Look, it seems so often that we've been, tied up in trade minutia and trade news. It's nice to finally be back to the games. It's only been a week,
Dave.
I know. No, it's been like 2 weeks. The Luka trade just
I know
just killed me. So we're back to the games.
Like many years.
We're back to the games. The Sixers having just not a great season, but hey, 3 games in a row where they have Paul George, Joel Embiid, and Tyrese Maxey out there. Finally, things looking good. Oh, wait. No, they've lost all 3 of those games. They've lost 4 in a row, Zena. And this 4th one might be the most embarrassing one. They just look completely lifeless, and they were doing it at home in front of the Super Bowl champion Eagles who showed up. And the game ends, Zena. I'm just going to jump straight to the end. They lose to the Raptors because the Raptors have turned into this punchy team who's doing things. Mm-hmm. We're gonna have to talk to someone up there, maybe just ask. And but the end of the game, Joel Embiid, it's his moment. This is the reason he has the big 5-year, $300 million left on his contract. Gets the ball wide open, 10 seconds left. They're down 2. He has a chance to win or maybe take a step in, tie the game up. And instead, he doesn't look comfortable. He does a little drive. He loses the ball and somehow dribbles the ball off the back of his head. And I feel bad for him because he doesn't look right physically, Zena, but couldn't have gone worse.
He looks like a shell of himself out there. You're absolutely right. In that play, you expect Joel Embiid to take a dribble in and take that jumper, that free throw extended jumper that we know he can hit, that mid-range easy swish. But no, it's like he second guessed himself. We all saw it. We all felt it. And I think that that's the thing that is resonating with all of us about this season is that we're all seeing this decline for Joel Embiid in the way that he's coming out there and trying to get back into the shape and the player that he is. And yet it's not manifesting out there on the court. And right now, when you look at Joel Embiid, Paul George, Tyrese Maxey, this big 3 that so much emphasis was put on in the East. This was the group that was going to challenge Boston. This was the group that was going to be the new big 3 in the East. They've played 252 minutes together this year, 13 games total. Now, a lot of that is out of their hands. It's quite literally their bodies that have been fighting against them. The injuries have been an issue. But even with the time left in the season, there's not enough time for them to coalesce out there on the court to really make an impact. Tyrese Maxey's body has been run through the ground. I mean, Dave, what are we hearing out of the Philadelphia Sixers?
All right. So I'm glad you asked because, the other day during the ESPN broadcast, Lisa Salters, she mentioned that Joel Embiid believes he's going to need off-season knee surgery.
Out of nowhere.
That's not even a red flag.
Right.
That, you know what I mean? Like a red flag is a warning. That is literally saying, oh no, we're past it. Like we're now scheduling. Right?
Yeah,
we're past the warning part. So that's a disaster. And then post game last night, Nick Nurse is asked about Tyrese Maxey's poor performance and essentially alludes to the fact that he's injured, which he has been injured as well this season.
Yeah.
I just, Paul George isn't 100%. And you know where I'm going now, Zena.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They need to get into the bottom 6 to keep that pick.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if they're even going to make the play-in with the way things have gone for them. And I just got to ask you, should they just shut it down? Is it time to just say, hey, it's not worth the risk for Embiid. Let's go ahead and get that surgery now. Maybe he can be healthy for next season.
Yeah. I'm of the board of yes, shut it down. Mainly because it feels as if they're already doing it and providing a disclaimer, right? Where you kind of get that warning label of just in case this goes south,
Right.
we told you that there's a surgery to be scheduled. We told you that Tyrese Maxey isn't feeling 100%. We told you these things. And so I feel as if we're all supposed to be almost prepared for some of this to kind of blow up in our faces in terms of this big three not coming to fruition. With everything that Joel Embiid has put on the line for his body, shut it down, allow him to rest, allow him to come back. Same thing with Tyrese Maxey. He has done a phenomenal job of trying to keep this boat above water. And it's just not it's not getting to a level where they're going to position themselves well for the playoffs. So why push it?
Yeah, it just seems like a risk. And the thing about Embiid, this contract is untradeable. You cannot move him right now. So this is your team for next year. I mean, Paul George has not had a great season. I don't know what the market would look like for him. You certainly are going to lose out on a deal if you try to move on this summer. So to me, why not start gearing things up for next year and try to at least give it one more shot with these guys before you try to tear things down. We've got some, I guess, this is a little bit of good news and bad news. I mean, the bad news is that the Suns lost and the Grizzlies really handled them until the end of the game. KD gets hot, and it kind of coincides with him getting his 26th point of the game, which, of course, was 30,000 for his career. And he led this nice little comeback. And really, like, he made a couple of defensive plays right after. It was kind of like he got pumped. But before we talk about the game, I do want to talk about KD. Look, 30,000 points, finishes this game. Think about it. He has 30,000 points, finishes this game with 34 points. I mean, the guy is still putting up 34 a game. He had 5 blocks. He is the 8th leading scorer in NBA history, 8th guy to pass 30,000 points. Do you want to hear a fun stat? Do you know who the next guy that has a chance at 30,000? Take a guess. The next active player. James Harden.
Is it PG?
No, it's James Harden.
James Harden.
James Harden. The next 2 guys, actually, that have a shot at 30,000 is James Harden and Russell Westbrook. So that's a heck of, how's that really? For a big 3?
Right. It's so crazy to think that when you watch posters of the 3 of them together, like, people are going to be like, this isn't a real poster. This is AI, right? Like, they were really together on one team. Wow, that is actually surreal. And it is really crazy that we're getting to watch Kevin Durant and LeBron James just still be in their primes, right? And tonight, it was not just the offense. It was the defense you mentioned, Dave. Like, when he hit his 26 points in that third quarter, it felt as if not only was he energized, the team was energized, the arena was more energized, and all of a sudden, they started making the Grizzlies speed up. Everything was in the favor of the Phoenix Suns. And it was like, all right, cool. Kevin can still do this. He can still be the center point and the focal point of an offense getting going, of a defense getting going. It was cool to see the dog come out of him. He was handling Jaren Jackson Jr. I think that's important to note, like, who his assignment was towards the end of the game, was tying up Jaren Jackson Jr., keeping him off of the boards. And you could just see how hungry he still is, even after hitting that 30,000 milestone. It's really a lucky thing we get to watch.
KD is a good enough player that we're talking about the game like the Suns won. You know what I mean? Like, he's a special enough player that we kind of did that. I will say the Grizzlies, look, they're just a better basketball team than the Suns. Yeah. But the Suns might have stumbled into a starting center because Bol he put up 18 points, 14 rebounds, had a few blocks. But most importantly for the Suns, spaced the floor. He took 10 threes. He hit 3 of them. So maybe Shaq was onto something. I'm just saying.
And hit a big 3 at the end of the game, too, to put them in a good position. So, yeah. That's
right. The Bulls could have used them, especially at the start of the game. We're not going to talk about this game because the Pistons just dusted them. They could have doubled up the score. But you have to say
the stat, Dave. What was the stat to start the game for the Bulls?
They started the game 0 for 20 from 3.
In today's NBA, folks?
Unbelievable.
Unacceptable.
Unbelievable. They scored 29 points in the first half. The Bulls are just sad, Zena. And finally, before we go to break, Jahlil Okafor played 3 minutes for the Indiana Pacers.
Welcome back, Jahlil.
That's right. He last played in the NBA in the 2020-2021 season. He played for the Pistons. But this guy, highly touted prospect, number 2 pick in the draft. Obviously, it doesn't work out for him because he's this big man throwback guy coming up when everyone's looking for a stretch big in Zena. Right. But we're big on bigs on this show, not just
absolutely.
You. And this guy fought and clawed and came back, got a 10-day contract. This is a great story.
I respect anyone that finds their way back into the NBA. It is so competitive, especially when you're not a stretch big. You're a more traditional post. Jahlil Okafor, we're giving you your flowers. Good for you. Welcome back to the league.
Insanely skilled player who's so much fun to watch. So I don't know. I mean, he's probably not going to contribute all that much, but still, great story. Guys, stick around after the break. We got James Edwards late. We kept him up late. The last few weeks have just been dominated by the Western Conference, the trade deadline, Luka Doncic especially. But the New York Knicks are a pretty good story, Zena. They're the 3rd best team in the East pretty easily, I'd say. So James Edwards, our New York Knicks beat writer at The Athletic, following the team around. You're in Indiana, where they just handled the Pacers. Not really a problem there. Huge win over a team that's been playing very well in the Pacers. The Knicks just don't have a ton of these kind of wins to hang their hat on. So, how big is this one?
I think it's big for a few reasons. One, they just came off of a big loss to Boston the night 2 nights before. And obviously, I think for a lot of fans, one, they're happy to be in the position where this team is having these type of conversations and expectations. But 2, there are expectations, right? And it's a team that has not beaten Cleveland, Boston, or Oklahoma City this year. It's a team that going into tonight, they were 5-7 against the top 8 teams in the East. Now they're 6-7 and will likely get to 7-7 tomorrow against Atlanta, as they obviously are very depleted right now and pivoting toward the tank. So it's going to be a situation where the Knicks need to try to rack up these wins, not just because they need them, because I agree with you. I don't think Indiana's going to catch them in the standings.
Yeah.
But just to continue to build confidence, continue to find ways against different play styles. Indiana obviously is one of the fastest and most kind of free teams that there are. And I thought tonight the Knicks did a good job of just being physical. I think they had 70 points in the paint. Towns didn't settle for threes. He took a decent amount, but he was getting to the paint, had a bunch of and ones. Josh Hart was cutting them to death in the dunker spot, offensive rebounds. Those 2 really carried them. Brunson had foul trouble. I think he got 5, 2 minutes into the third, 3 minutes into the third. It was just a very kind of grinded out and outlast your opponent. And the Pacers had opportunities to make it close. The Knicks played just enough good defense, I think, to keep the Pacers at arm's length. And then just being able to kind of rack up those points in the paint and those and ones, I think was huge. And they did so well on the glass too. So I think that they found a little bit of a blueprint there with just being physical against the Pacers. And I thought it wore them down at the end and allowed the Knicks to kind of extend themselves in the last 4 or 5 minutes of that game.
There's so much that you just listed out there that I want to kind of branch off of. But one particularly stands out, and I think it's related, and it's related to Karl-Anthony Towns because, of course, he had a phenomenal game, a 40-burger, 12 rebounds, also 7 assists, which is something that we have to give him credit for this year. He has been a phenomenal distributor. But there was also plays throughout the game that you saw that if he was in transition on defense, or if he was in the pick and roll on defense, he kind of got burned quite a few times. And when you think about the New York Knicks and their strive to be contenders, the defense is the problem. Our teammate, if you guys listen to the show, noticed a tweet that said, Knicks defensive rating versus opponent offensive rank. If a team is in the bottom 10th, then the Knicks are 8th overall in their defensive rating over them. Handle the bottom 10 really well. But if they're in the middle 10 or in the top 10 in terms of offense, the Knicks are 25th and 27th in defensive rating against those types of teams. They can't defend good offensive firepower type of teams. What is the answer to that if the Knicks want to contend?
That's the question that they're trying to figure out. That's the question we're trying to figure out. And I think there's 2 things with that. As you mentioned, Towns playing the 5, they obviously, they know the importance of that offensively, right?
Yeah.
That opens up so much for their offense, the spacing. It's what's made them who they are, which is one of the most high powered, the second best offense in basketball.
Yep.
Now, defensively, where the issues come, and I noted this when they made the trade for him, it's not Cat and Jalen's fault that they have limitations defensively. They compete, they both try, but they have limitations. One guy's smaller, and Jalen, not the quickest feet. Cat is bigger, has had injuries, not the most nimble.
Yep.
And you see teams, specifically Boston, just spam the pick and roll over and over and over until they get Brunson on Tatum or Brunson on Brown, and then they get past him, and then it's one move and they're past Cat. And it's pretty much just trying to put those two in the action, and it takes away. And then if OG comes to help, if Mikal comes to help, if Josh comes to help, they got shooters everywhere.
Right.
And I think the stat you mentioned, which was a tremendous stat. I think it was DJ Ace, who's a big Knicks fan.
There you go.
I think a lot of that is the middle teams and the top teams, you have more than likely have an elite creator at the very least. Like if we're including, I don't know where the Pistons fall on that, but Cade has been one of the, I know Dave hates to hear this, Cade has been one of the best.
I'm on board. He's good.
There you go. Dave is coming around.
I just need the evidence. Just be good. I don't want theoretical good.
No, I'm with you.
Yeah.
Like he's been one of the best pick and roll players this year. Trey, again, in the middle of the pack. I don't know where they are offensively. They're a middle of the pack team. Trey has been one of the best pick and roll players. Even when the Bulls had Levine and the Bulls beat the Knicks earlier this year. Like there are so many good playmakers at the point of attack in basketball, and the Knicks see them often. And I think that when you have those ones that are above good, they're able to kind of take those disadvantages to the tool shed, and they're able to generate offense for the team too. So I think that's the big thing. I think the really, really good teams are putting Brunson and Cat in the action. It's not their fault. They both try, they both compete. They just have limitations. And that's why I kind of had questions about the makeup of the roster after the trade, because I didn't think the Knicks would be worse, but I wasn't sure that they would be better. I just knew that they'd be different. And I think it's shown itself. They were a really good offensive team last year. They're way better this year, even though I think they were top 5 last year. Where they're at this year is even better. And defensively, they were 5th last year and they're 17th this year. And that's a pretty big gap. Obviously, Dallas, I think, was a top 5 offense last year and 18th on defense in the regular season. So it can lead to something, right? But I do think that is the biggest hurdle they have to climb. Having two players who have limitations defensively.
There were stretches against the Pacers where I did think Cat played some really good defense. And it's just, the thing is, you don't see it enough out of him.
Yeah.
And there's an argument, maybe he uses up so much energy on the offensive end. I don't buy that because there's plenty of people who can play both ways, but you know, it is what it is. And maybe with that defense, look, we know Cat can play next to a big, his floor spacing, maybe Mitchell Robinson, if he comes back, it'll help shore things up. I want to talk about Josh Hart a little bit because he's been overlooked a little bit.
Absolutely.
Yeah. 30 points, 10 rebounds, first 30 and 10 for Josh Hart. You go look at his numbers and you compare him to some of these all-star guys. You consider it like 10 rebounds a game at 6'4", some of the things that he does. Man, I'm not willing to make the argument directly that he's an all-star or got snubbed, but it's not that crazy of a conversation.
No, it's not. And I think you could make the case that he is one of the 15 most important players to winning in basketball this season. I think you could make the case that he's been the Knicks' second, definitely their most consistent player if you're counting both sides of the ball. And maybe their second or third best player this year. I wrote a story a few weeks ago how he has has a chance to be the first player under 6'8" to average. What is the numbers? I'm trying to find it here. I can't find it right now. At least 14 points, 9 rebounds, 5 assists, and a steal while shooting about 50% from the field and 35% from three. He's 6'4". I think people forget that. The only players to ever do it are Embiid, Jokic, and Larry Bird. So think about a 6'4" guy. Everyone's like, you could pick point pick any stats and make a weird thing out of it. Well, only 3 guys have done it.
Right.
I'm not saying Josh Hart is in the same conversation, but I think it goes to tell you how impactful he is to winning, especially at his size.
Well, he's weird. He's a weird player, James, in a good way, right? Like he is this purpose-built tool almost designed to do only the things that he does. And he's just one of these rare guys that's happy doing it. Yeah. I mean, he's a special player in my opinion. Yeah.
He's got a motor to him and a relentlessness to him. I mean, when you think about one of the most advantageous things that he does for his game, it's the O-boards. And when you think about offensive rebounding in the game of basketball, it is all about having a motor. It's all about having a nose for the ball. Everyone is in position to block you out. And somehow 6'4", Josh Hart is getting tips, is getting the ball in. He's getting rebounds. He's getting putbacks. He's getting points for his team and opportunities for his team. And it's not like this is a new aspect for him. He was doing this at Villanova. Like this is just who he is, as a player. And it is, I agree with you in that when you think about players that are impacting winning, those type of plays and the types of plays that he makes absolutely do that for the Knicks.
We've talked about it. I've mentioned it to him. Like, those are the type of guys that every championship team has. And we could just use recent memory, right? Like Kentavious Caldwell-Pope helped the Lakers win, helped the Nuggets win. Bruce Brown, right? Draymond Green's the ultimate example. I mean, we could go on those X factors, whatever you want to call them, glue guys, whatever you want to call them. But I think I agree with Zena. Like, those guys, those motors are unmatched, but also, like, I think we don't give enough credit to how smart those players are.
Right.
Like, it's the instincts to go get a rebound.
Correct.
It's the instincts to know when to cut. It's the instincts to know when to make the right pass. And
it's
I
the
think
instinct
Josh,
to know when to fly hard around a screen and take a bump and draw the offensive foul too. I mean, he just plays the game in 4 dimensions at all times, and it goes unnoticed too often. I mean, we get excited about Josh Hart. I mean, it's kind of like a man really in a SAR, right? Like you see them. I was
just going to say the Thompson twins give me a similar vibe to them. And I think that's why we have an appreciation for their game. And it's exciting for the Thompson twins because they're just going to continue to build that. But Josh Hart is obviously, he's operating at a championship level to me, I think,
for sure.
in the way that he approaches it. It's cool.
Yeah. And I think too, just really quick, I think people also don't realize he is one of the best finishers I've ever seen. He's shooting above 70% at the rim and he's 6'4". That's not normal for people that don't know. Like, that's, if you look at who has the best field goal percentage in basketball, it's a bunch of 6'10" guys and higher. And then Josh Hart, like 70% at the rim is insane for a guard.
That's actually surprising.
Yeah. Like, it's not normal. And he just knows how to play the game of basketball at the end of the day. And not many guys do in this league.
Before we get out of here, what do you got coming out? What are you working on?
Yeah, if you're listening to this on Wednesday morning, I have a story that I've been working on coming out. It's when I started the story and I thought about it, the idea was I thought it would be a little bit more fun than it turned out. It turned out a little bit more eerie. It's about how players get harassed by fans because they lose them a bet or a parlay. And obviously that's an unintended consequence of us as a society, us as sports fans, them as leagues, from getting in bed with gambling. It's not something that I don't think people like thought about or have at the forefront of their mind when they do this. But I talked to Jalen Brunson, like he gets death threats on his months-old daughter, his family. And this is like the Knicks could win by 20 and he could have 30 and maybe he didn't have the assist he needed and people lose their minds and the messages that they get. So it's basically just taking you into like their mindset as gambling has become so popular and how it impacts them and how they try to like, they obviously like laugh it off and stuff, but like there's certain situations where guys are like, this stuff is like, there's some cruel shit being said. Just a different look. Yeah, I think to me, we talk a lot about gambling and nobody's really talked about that aspect because it's not something that's visible to us. Like we see tweets every now and then, but these guys get it way more than I think the general public understands or realizes.
Did you
It's not
finish
fun.
the article with any hope that there could be a solve for this?
So the league says they have things in place where, like, if you get harassed, you can report it. I just don't think it's possible. Like, the only way it's possible is if you ask players to make their social media accounts private or don't have them. And in today's world, all these guys are brands. They're not going to do that. To me, it's like I said, an unintended consequence of the world we're in. I just don't see how you can stop it without asking guys to cut off their social media.
Yeah, it's amazing. People don't do this with people trading stocks, and you know, it's similar. Anyway, that's not a fun story, but it is an important one. So thanks for writing it. Go and read that over at The Athletic. Go and follow James as he chronicles the quest of the Knicks to, I don't know, are they going to shock the world in the playoffs? Can they do it?
I need to see them lose to Boston by less than 15 before I get
Fair
there.
point.
But
there we go. That's a fair point.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for today's show, folks. For James Edwards and Zena Keita, I'm Dave DuFour, and this has been the NBA Daily. Thanks for waking up with us.